But in a situation where you find that
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, thank you for staying with us. And if you're just joining, you're watching Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you live from the nation's capital. Now, this morning, let's take a look at the stories that made the headlines, beginning with the Daily Trust newspaper. And on Daily Trust newspaper, the first story there on page 6, as a matter of fact, says 800 teachers lost to insurgency in Northeast. That's according to the NUT. Over 50 Kano filling stations shut as fuel scarcity looms. Of course, the very issue we started bantering about. Now, the lead story also says, disquiet as customs officers extort motorists on highways. With a rider, we are made to pay between 10,000 to 150,000 naira. That's according to motorists. Petrol legal. Show proof of extortion. That's according to the NCS spokesperson. You'd also find the picture there showing you some officers of the Nigeria Customs on patrol there. Anambra Guba, Soludo coast to victory. That's on page 10. And then at the very bottom, Senators kick as CCT treats 30 cases in 10 months. Abducted chief imam's son bitten by snake while escaping from kidnappers.
Terrible.
Herdsman hand over family member to police for killing farmer. Now the story about the NCS officers extorting motorists and all of that. Well, I would say that is most likely a two-way thing. I mean, if you look at the persons extorting, they must have found one reason or the other to do that. So it's either maybe my suspicion is that the motorists are carrying some illegal goods or some sort, and then they need to move them, and so they have to do some kind of sorting and all of that. But either way you look at it, it's not good for the economy. It's not good for our system. We need to have a system that can grow without being disrupted by smuggling and other forms of criminal activities. Well, that's it. These are the stories that made the headlines on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the stories on the Punch newspaper. Right on page 34, banks, insurance firms rake in 22.6 billion from MDAs. Federal government meets customs as 566,000 metric tons of India Thailand rice arrive Benin Republic. And on page 22, you'd find Senate knocks CCT for ignoring corruption cases from CCB. And on page 7 of the Punch newspaper, politicians jostling for 2023 eyeing uncertain future. That's according to Adeboye. And the Punch newspaper is leading with the story Anambra governorship poll. Soludo set to win. Leads in 17 local governments. APC alleges rigging. Wow. One would say that a lot of people didn't see ABGA, taking the lead in the Anambra governorship elections. But you're going to see the details of that story on the Daily Punch, on the Punch newspaper rather. And the writer is saying PDP, YPP win in one local government each. APC yet to win. The other writer is saying we won't accept result. ABGA rigged, claims APC. And on page 6, you'd find Salami report Magu on half pay 16 months after suspension. You'd also find 43-year-old man arrested for beating daughter to death over persistent crime. That's absurd, isn't it?
Very, very absurd.
Still on the Punch newspaper, you'd find Pantami's professorship. ASU panel grills photo registrar, recommends litigation. So these are some of the stories on the Punch newspaper.
I mean, the discussion about the Anambra polls, you know that definitely it's going to be everywhere, you know, as expected this morning. And I mean, if you look at APGA being the I would say, the incumbent party in the state, the ruling party in the state, so to say, they seem to have an edge. And the candidate, well, Charles Soludo, former CBN governor, well, appears to be leading, you know, in that election. Eventually, it's going to be announced. But from what we see so far, election results from 17 local governments shows that he is leading in that party. Well, we get to see the outcome. Of course, in every election, there will be a winner and a loser. And that's why we have, you know, election tribunals, you know, all the time. So in case of disagreement, you know, politicians can always, you know, go to the courts for them to get, you know, final verdicts. Well, let's take a look at other papers this morning, and the Nation newspaper is what we're looking at now. The first story there says how Nigeria can be greater by Adeboye, and that's on page 5. Cleric decries corruption. Well, of course, it's a major conversation on our national, you know, growth. And of course, you would find also Ikoyi building victims' families besiege IDH with a rider. Death toll rises, and that's on page 6 of the Nation. And the next story there says Jai's Bank grows profit by 54% to 3.3 billion naira in third quarter. That's on page 18 of the Nation newspaper. Pantami, ASU probe panel clears photo, and that's on page 7 as well. You would find below the nameplate, rice smuggling on the rise. That's Minister laments. Tier 1 banks' assets hit 46 trillion naira. And then somewhere below there, you would find above the lead story, drug dealer behind multiple UK-bound consignments in NDLA nets. The lead story says Soludo coasting to victory with a rider. APGA candidate wins 18 of 20 councils. YPP, PDP take one each. Final results after supplementary poll holds in Ihiala tomorrow. And then at the very bottom, you would find 2 abducted Baptist worshippers shot dead, 3 hospitalized. Well, it's interesting that this conversation about the Anambra polls, you know, is just leading everywhere. And it's kind of like, you know, against all odds, or I would say, against the expectations of many, that the election is going to be marred by violence, you know, owing to the threats that we have seen, you know, before the election and all of that, and the massive deployments that we've seen. But relatively, one may say that it was a peaceful election, you know, in some way, and that's a great one.
Well, some have raised concerns with regards to, you know, observing COVID-19 protocols and all of that, saying the election was kind of rowdy and they didn't observe the COVID-19 protocol.
I mean, do we observe COVID-19 protocols in
anymore?
The market? You know, I mean, let's be realistic. For many people, not many really take the issue of the COVID-19 thing seriously. So almost as if all the protocols, the safety protocols have been thrown to the winds, you know, in recent times. If you go to the markets, you go to the schools, you go to, you know, gatherings, you know, large social gatherings, you don't see people maintain all of that. So I do not really expect anything different with elections, you know.
Okay. I think we're going. Let's take a short break now. When we come back, we're going to take some of the reports that our reporters brought in from the Anambra election. Stay with us.